I had over 40 properties at one stage, and all buy-to-lets, and it was all mostly self-certification mortgages. And then I had a hunting fund with the Ulster Bank for £3 million.
The bank literally gave you a hunting fund. They literally said there is 3 million, you find a property.
Take these funds, buy the property, no personal guarantee, no nothing. That would have been 04, 05, 06. I mean, I went from, as I say, having a big house and a Porsche and all them sort of things to thinking, right, what I was selling next. The banks didn't regulate enough on the valuation. You know, how can you buy something in February for 100 and it'll be worth 200 in June? To me, that's madness, you know, and that's why they brought in the 6-month rule, but that was too late. And that's how I ended up with over 40 properties in England. Whenever you say it's leasehold, they all panic. Why is this detached house in the middle of wherever leasehold? Because it's for 10,000 years. If I hadn't have had things like that fall in my favour, I'd have been gone. Yeah. And as a solicitor, I can't be gone because I can't be bankrupt. Yeah. So I still have a pile of property that is in negative equity. And think about it, it's 2024.
Welcome to the Property Funding Podcast, the podcast to help developers by giving them tips and lessons, showing them how they can save time and money. Delighted today to be welcomed by Mr. Raymond Crooks. Raymond, delighted to have you here.
I see you, David.
And you've come along today to have a good chat about being a property solicitor in the Northern Ireland property market.
Yes, very much so.
So
for my sins.
For your sins.
Exactly.
Well, we go back, I think, to around about 2004, would that be right?
Possibly, yeah.
4 or 5,
yeah.
I think, when we first met. So
I would have thought earlier, but then time flies when you're having fun. So
yeah, well, we got into property in 2000, so
yeah.
it may have been around about 2002 or 3, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we had a limited company, maybe it might have been 2002. You could be right, actually, on that. But a wee while anyway.
Yes,
exactly.
It
wasn't yesterday.
No,
the day
it was
before.
not. That's for sure.
You know, so you are the one of the partners in TC Legal, Thompson Crook Legal.
Yep.
When did you end up there, or how did that come about?
I trained in TM Hearn, which is now Diamond Hearn Solicitors in Belfast, large sort of commercial firm, and left in 1998. And I had a friend who was dating a solicitor's daughter. And he's just opened a practice a few months in the Shankill Road, and I went for an interview with him, like this crack, and ended up, I thought I'll go here for a few years and see how I get on. And that was 1998, and I'm still there. Thompson is gone, he's retired, he's in his 70s. He was older when he qualified, he was in his 40s. He was a shirt manufacturer, or a shirt manager for a manufacturers, and then went and trained in Open University. And 41 or 2 started on his own, so he was well ahead of the game. He's in his 70s now, so he's
money made, retired.
He's retired, life. Feet up, and left me with all the drama.
Very good. Well, I'm not sure if you remember the first time we did a bit of business, and when I describe you to people, and people might say, and obviously you're doing a lot of speaking at the property networking events in the province and wider afield, and people might say, do you know Raymond Cook? I says, yep. Done a lot of biz Raymond over the years, and in fact I'll tell you the story about the first time I ever completed some business with Raymond and what an unusual experience it was. So I can see this blank look in your face. Where is David going with this?
Exactly.
So we had been using, I'll not say which one, but we've been using one of the larger firms in Belfast, and we had been involved in a limited company. We bought actually about 26 properties in 18 months at early days, so a lot of in and out with the solicitors. And
capital home loan mortgages, probably.
Yes, there was a few of those on the go. So anyway, we used to go into completely when we bought some of our own stuff. The gentleman concerned, old school. You'd walked into the building and the legal assistant would have taken you into the boardroom. Massive sort of proper oak boardroom, polished, shine.
Something you see in the TV.
All the documents laid out, numbered and marked. And you'd be in sitting down, you almost were afraid to take tea and coffee, because to even think of putting your cup and saucer on this wonderful boardroom table was like, and then he would come in, and you almost felt like getting up when he came in, that sort of and always Mr. Mrs. Johnson, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, trying to sign anything with him was like an hour and a half long process. So we complete our first property with you, into the office in the Shankill Road. I'm in the office waiting. You walk in with a brown folder, you open it up, you hadn't even sat down, you fired the document across the table, threw me a big pen and went, here, put your scrawl on that.
That sounds right. That's good enough.
And I thought, well, this is a bit different.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember saying to you then, whenever we started to use you more, I like the fact you were just as it is. You just get the business done. You're here to sign.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
I've done what I've done. Put your signature there. Let's get on with it. And sort of cut through all the noise and all the palaver around it.
Oh, no, very much so. My analogy is when you're driving a car. If your car breaks down, you go into the mechanic and he tells you need it fixed. You don't go in and start asking questions, which everybody can. Of course, you're entitled to ask your questions, but you know, you have guys who come in and want to know about the 1888, you know, legislation and how it refers to your mortgage deed, and it's like, no.
you don't really want to go there.
If you want to know that, you can go to law school. You know,
That's true.
You don't need to know the ins and outs,
yeah.
as long as it's correct and it's all pretty.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and I certainly find you very efficient and get things done, and obviously, as you say, the knowledge was there, but you didn't have to share it with every single client.
Yes, exactly.
You just got on with it. So let's go back a little, because that was my first introduction of Mr. Raymond Cook, which was always very memorable. So if we go right back then, sort of school, early life, anything sort of stand out, and then what took you into, well, you've already explained a little bit, but what took you down the process?
I'm a bit of a strange one. I failed my 11 plus, went to Carrickfergus High School, loved it, loved skills, always done well. Ended up, went to Shorts as a 16-year-old to be an electronic technician.
Right, okay.
And within 16 seconds, maybe even 6 of been in the place, I thought this isn't for me. Went to my parents. I had got decent grades, and I had been offered an apprenticeship in Shorts. I'd been offered an apprenticeship in the shipyard. I think that's how long ago that was. And I had been offered a place to go to Inst grammar school, mainly because I played rugby, and that was I loved the rugby, and I was going to go there and do my A-levels and win the Skills Cup. And none of my family had ever been to university, never mind do A-levels.
Right.
So I was sort of guided towards Shorts. Most of my family were all tradesmen, mum and dad. Dad was a painter and decorator, mum was a waitress, and worked hard, but didn't get what I seen as the benefits for it, you know. So ended up going back to school to do my A-levels in Carrick Grammar to be a PE teacher.
Right.
And the last day I left school, I was walking out with my girlfriend, now wife, Lindsay, and the careers teacher had put up a yellow pamphlet, never forget it, on the wall. And the yellow pamphlet was a new law degree being held in the Georgetown, University of Ulster, and it was their very first ever law course.
Right.
In 1996, that would have been, it would have been actually about 93, qualified 96, so it would have been 93. And I applied for that, not knowing what I wanted to do. I got into history, I got into geography, I applied for a whole pile of stuff.
Right.
And I got into the law class and didn't know I could even be a solicitor, didn't know anything about it.
Just
and that's talk about the film Sliding Doors, where things happen. And the next thing, I was surrounded by people whose parents were lawyers, judges, grandfather was like Lord Chief Justice and all that sort of stuff, and they were all striving to become part of the legal profession. I hadn't a clue.
Nor was it a huge aspiration to.
No, I just wanted to make money. And that's I wanted to do something. I like the sound of it. You know, when you're young, doctor, lawyer, all that sort of stuff. You know, it's the profession to be in. Whether it is now or not, it's another matter. But no, definitely that I had a strange outlay, and even when I was at university, you know, worked in all sorts of pubs and clubs and restaurants and bars and done everything because we weren't wealthy by any means. You know, and whenever I went to university. When I went back to the grammar school, the headmaster at the time, you had to pay £40 or £50, whatever it was, for books or for your fee to go into school. Yeah. And I wrote the cheque out on my own personal account because I'd been working for a year in Shorts. Right. And the headmaster said to me, he says, "That's the first time I've ever taken a cheque from a pupil." From a pupil. And I got a good reference from the old school, the old teachers who were there. Said, you know, he's a good lad, and loved it.
There we are, and that profession that's you right through then.
That's it. Went to Georgetown, and then I got into the Institute of Professional Legal Studies to train to be a solicitor. But the year I qualified, they had the very last law degree that was 4 years at Queen's on the first 3 year. So there was a double whammy, and then there was a first ever law degree coming out of Georgetown. So there was like a double hit, and they gave the top students an option to go and defer for a year. and I was given an option to defer for a year. Right. And Nuala Alone, who was a police ombudsman, yes, was doing the master's course at Georgetown at the time, and I applied for the master's in administrative and legal studies, right, and ended up getting paid to do a master's because it was funded by the European Social Fund. I got £444 a month to be educated, whereas now the kids are paying 10 grand a year just for an honorary degree, just to stand still. So good times.
I was going to say, that's the,
you know, and one of the last to get a student grant, I think I get £683 a term. I remember getting the cheque, which took me to Australia, Crete, and somewhere else.
I was about to say, what did it get spent on?
No, exactly. You know,
very good.
I lived at home, so it was fantastic.
That was easy.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that. Obviously, part of your journey. My brother actually went to Carrick Grammar. I went to Downshire for a while. A couple of years before you, obviously. Me being older than you, but I was Downshire.
Well, that's it.
Yeah, very much across Carrick Grammar, was kicking them on the football pitch or the rugby pitch.
Yeah, well, you would have been football, big style.
Definitely.
I was more rugby than anything. You know.
No, good times back then, and that was like early 80s. That would have been.
Yeah.
Early 80s I would have been there. So,
yeah, because I left in I went back, left high school 89, back to the grammar to do my A-levels in 90, so 92 I went to Georgetown, 4 years there, and then 2 years at Queen's at the Institute exams, and got into TM Heron then as a trainee, and then stayed forever in the Shankill.
That's the area. So those early life then, or even say when you get into the legal profession, you thought, right, property conveyancing, any kind of mentors, anyone who influenced you greatly back in those days?
There wasn't even internet, David, back then, so
the sphere of influence was quite
exactly
small.
You know, and there was no sort of get rich quick books the way there is now. I've never really had an interest in what anybody else was doing. I've never read books, I've never listened to podcasts as such. I do listen to some, but I've never ever felt the need. I was very much, my mum and dad worked hard. My mum had us when we were kids viewing houses. I remember we went to quite a few houses that were doer-uppers, and just the way work happened, we had a couple of houses, but never had anything that I thought we could do. And then there was no finance. I mean, in the 80s, my mum and dad's first mortgage was I think it was 18%, because I remember when I got their title deeds, when they eventually paid their own mortgage off, and I've seen this on other people's deeds as well. Their first loan was 18%. It actually states it on the mortgage, and you think to yourself, how did anybody ever buy a house?
I know.
You know, in the 80s.
It's fascinating. And we'll definitely get into that. I've just realised that because you and I know each other so well, I've actually missed out on how we normally start our podcast, and that is the quick fire round. So usually it's a very brief introduction, and then I asked you a bunch of questions, and you've literally got one word answers for me.
Right.
All right. So obviously you haven't seen these before, so it's literally just straight into them. Favorite food?
Indian.
Favorite film?
Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, there's a controversial one. Favorite country in the world?
Russia.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There you are now.
There's a
Not many people know that.
I was going to say we can dissect that a bit. Favorite sport? I can know that one.
Rugby.
Team you support?
Leeds United. Indoctrinated by my father.
Right. Okay.
But I'm more rugby and golf man.
Okay. Obviously you follow Ulster, I'm assuming.
Yes, on the rug. Sorry, I'm thinking football.
I've been as well as your football.
Yes, Ulster. Well, Ulster and Ireland would be. Ireland. It's if you're a rugby man, that's it. You don't have a choice. There's no options.
There's no options. Well, that's true too. But I guess, of course, when I said favorite, team, you thought football, it being the sort of the senior sport of the two.
When you're a rugby player, David, you don't have an option. You support the team you're born for.
That is true. To be fair, that's a good point on that one.
Well, unless you go move away, and of course you can qualify for anybody these days.
Well, that's another route. That's another route as well. Okay, Apple or Android?
Android.
Good. Yeah, you're with me. You're in the minority, but definitely Android man. Okay, dream car.
Ooh, Lamborghini.
Okay, color.
Purple.
Oh, is it thought out? I know you got to be. Is it a Porsche on your?
I have a 911
on your WhatsApp,
and it's purple.
Is that the one you have now? Okay.
Santorini blue, I think it is actually, but it's purple.
So you're not missed driving around Belfast, and
no, very much so.
Very good. Okay, here's a big controversial one now. Marmite, love it or hate it?
Never tasted it.
What? What?
Never tasted it, so probably
You
hate
have
it.
never tasted Marmite?
No, very strange, peculiar eater when I was a young man, and would never really have tasted anything that wasn't very plain.
Right. Have you ever had a drink of Bovril at a rugby match?
No, don't like Bovril, don't like the smell of it, don't like
Okay,
coffee.
well then
Don't drink coffee either.
at all.
No, I hate the smell of it. So it's that strong smell, that's maybe what puts me off it.
Okay, well then I think I'll put you down for a no then for Marmite.
Plenty of hot port, but no Bovril.
No Bovril. Yeah, okay. Favorite property type, as in like villas, terraced houses, and any type you particularly like?
Has to be detached.
Detached. Okay.
Yeah.
And last one, if you could own one property in one location anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Winter Palace in Petersburg. But
There we
bit
are.
that's a bit excessive.
So you paused at favourite food, you paused at favourite film, one property location, bang.
There you are.
Straight out. That says it all. Okay, so we've kind of got the early influences. So there wasn't really anybody sort of standing out that you kind of looked up to by way of.
Probably my parents and my wife as well. Me and Lindsay are together from we're 16, hard workers, and mum and dad always, and my father would have worked day and night, and for not a whole lot of return. We were never poor, but we were never when I think of the hours he puts in or he did put in, in his 70s now with all sorts of pains and aches because he's spent his whole life bending up and down, and my mum as well. My mum was always the frugal one. She was always the one, and she was the one probably who got my interest in property because she was the one who would have dragged us around houses when we were young to view different bits and pieces. So
it's an interesting discussion, not so much for today, but like that previous generation, they just expected hard work. It wasn't that they chose hard work.
No, very much so.
That's what was expected. You went out as the father of the house and you knocked your pan in from early morning to late night to provide. You might have got a week's holiday at Bangor or Portrush at the seaside, but that was it.
My mum started work when she was 14. I think my dad was maybe 15 or closer to 16. And my dad, when he got his first job, was a trainee painter in Belfast. Used to get £2.20p and shillings and D and all that nonsense, which I don't understand.
You're showing your age now.
And he had to give it he had to give the £2 to his mother, and the rest of the money was enough to keep him up and down in the train, and that was it.
That was it.
She made him his lunch.
Yeah.
And made him his dinner. So worked for nothing, literally.
Yeah, nothing.
And the rest of the family were all a bit younger, so he was one of the first ones. So you'll go out there and you learn your keep, and you come home and give it to your parents.
Yeah. There was a different generation and interesting discussion about society too, about the value of work ethic. Have you any strong opinions sort of on this generation in terms of their attitude to work, their attitude to?
I have 3 daughters. It's 3 teenagers, so 19, 18, soon to be 20, 18, and 15. The middle one likes to take it easy. Right. And the thoughts of having to get a job is quite traumatic. That's her father. That's her father's fault. But she works. They all work hard. The oldest one's studying law. Unfortunately, she wants to come after daddy's business.
Okay.
The middle one's doing geography, both at Queen's, and then the youngest, she's just starting her GCSEs this month. Yeah. Actually. But
you've instilled a strong work ethic in them.
Well, they know rightly, but I'm the good cop. Mummy's the bad,
right?
Yeah, so very much so. Mummy's the bad cop, and I'm the funny of the one. I'm the one who went to uni and done the whole thing. Lindsay didn't, but Lindsay's 3 daughters will be strong, independent women until they're dealing with her, and then they're not allowed to be strong, independent women. Which is one of my famous quotes in the house.
I was going to say, yeah, that's.
She goes and rolls the wrist, whether that's tidying bedrooms or doing whatever, and. She's the one, and that's thankfully how they are and where they are. And our middle one had a bit of dyslexia, not a bit, she's dyslexic and dyspraxic, and found it quite hard when she was young.
Okay.
But Lindsay sat her down and just nailed it into her.
Work through it.
Because if you hadn't been a good parent, she wouldn't be where she is now. She obviously has done her own work and she's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I think that makes a big difference whenever you've got and Lindsay. Hasn't worked since we had our first kids. Lindsay had a few trouble. We had an ectopic pregnancy before we had any kids, and she nearly died.
Right.
Back in the day, and I mean literally, nearly died. So after that, she never worked and then we had the 3 kids, bang, bang, bang.
Right.
You need to be earning 100 grand a year to be able to, you know,
It's
3
not cheap.
kids, 3 kids in 4 years is you know, it's not.
It's not for the faint-hearted.
No, it's not conducive to your wallet either, unless you've got mums and dads who are prepared to look after them. You know.
Yeah. No, that's it. So it sounds like you've obviously instilled like your
work ethic,
your kind of mentality on teamwork, and it's so important in this day and age. I think that kids get that. You know,
well, I always say to them, you know, what's your mojo, what's your motive? You know, how do you know, all this, what you're sitting in and these holidays you go on, don't come easy.
Yeah,
you know, and
exactly.
I think they know that, and they're happy enough. You know, my oldest told me that she wants my business and my house. So
well, you've trained her well. You've trained her well.
You know.
That's it. But it's great she has that desire too.
Well, that's
you
it. You know.
It can be challenged sometimes if the kids don't want anything to do with the family business. I've seen it second, third generation farms.
Yeah.
In this day and age down in Tyrone and Fermanagh, you know, guys who just sweat from morning to night. They had to take the farm because they were the oldest. They had no choice.
Yeah.
My wife's father was in that boat. He could have went to Oma Academy. I think he was 14 or something. That was it. You're the oldest farm. Yeah. And literally he wanted to do so much else with his life.
Yeah.
Bang, farm. That was you. And then when his sons then, Brenda's brothers, neither of the two of them were interested in the farm, and he found it hard to take, you know, after all generations of farming. But listen, you know, the world moves on too. Farming's not what it was,
no.
You know, back then. Everybody wanted property, never mind farming. So what then decided you to go conveyancing then when you said, right, this is my...
Fate. I was at an interest in property. I say probably from my mum, you know, dragging us around houses in Carrick. But Eddie Gibson was my master in TM Heron, and he was a big property guy back in the day. And also Ray Siegel was his senior partner at the time, or they were both senior partners in the firm, and they had done a lot of conveyancing. Ray Siegel, whenever Castle Court was first built, he was the solicitor who acted for, I think it was Sears from memory, who had all the leases. Mm-hmm. So, and that was a big thing, you know, all of a sudden you had 70 leases to be done all at once, and all these, you know, Boots and Debenhams and commercial clients that didn't really exist in Belfast at that time,
right,
you know, or wouldn't have had that, you know. There was Abbey Centre, but there was no, and I think he had most of the clients for that as well. There was no real, so they got me involved in property, but I just wanted to make money. So my first ever deal, I qualified in September 1998, and myself and Lindsay had our first house bought in the December, a doer-upper for 34 grand. And we borrowed £1,500 or £1,000 each from our parents as a deposit for the mortgage.
Right.
And within a year we had it remortgaged, and took 15 grand out of it and bought our next one. We'd done that 5 times in 7 years. So and 2 of the houses we lived in, we never lived in, or we didn't get out of the dining room in one of them because new kitchen, new bathroom.
All in, they didn't want it, yeah.
All in, and that was early noughties, where, I mean, we were making 35, 37 grand a house back then for nothing, and you took the deposit out. It paid for our honeymoon, it paid for our wedding, and then I got into investing with a friend, guy John Graham, who me and him bought our first house in the village for 27 grand and sold it within a year and made 27.5 grand on it. And the only thing we done was get drunk on it one weekend and paint it. And that's the truth. You know what I mean? We had a few beers and, you know, and I'll never forget, he was standing in the bath, painting the bath, and spilt the bloody paint all around the bath, and, you know, all silly things like that. And then me and him bought a house for 11 grand in Brookmount Street, facing my office in the Shankill, which no longer exists. And had a few very ropey tenants in it, and a guy who was caught with drugs and all this crack. But sold it, made money on it, and just kept going.
Just kept going and rolling.
And just went mad.
Them were the good, the old phrase,
the good bad
good
days.
Old days.
Where finance was just too easy. I mean,
listen,
I had over 40 properties at one stage, and all buy-to-lets, and it was all mostly self-certification mortgages. And then I had a hunting fund with the Ulster Bank for £3 million. And the Ulster Bank said, you go and basically see a house, we will give you the money. And they didn't ask for a survey, they didn't ask for any legals, they asked for a solicitor's undertaking, which was a 1-page document, which the solicitor was Thompson Crooks solicitors who signed the undertaking. They knew we were acting, and they knew we were doing it, and they were happy. So there was no rules and regulations.
I know we're going to call on the funding later on, but that's really good actually to unpack that, because the current property professional probably
wouldn't understand
is trying to work
that.
out what have you just said.
Madness.
So the bank literally gave you a hunting fund. They literally said there's
a pot,
3 million effectively on account, on deposit for you.
Yep.
You find a property. So what was the process then for them giving you that money? Just go through that again.
A one-page undertaking from a solicitor's that's basically say that you will take these funds, buy the property, register the ownership, and return the deeds to us. And that was a personal name.
And the personal name,
wasn't even no personal guarantee, no nothing. That would have been 04, 5, 6, and that's how I ended up with over 40 properties in England. We bought 2 places in America that I'd never seen and made money on them and sold them off plan. Properties in England sold off plan. That's the old days whenever you used to pay people to wait outside estate agents to then physically, release. Like there was a development in Carrickfergus at Barn Mills, 90 houses I think, or there was 90 flats and different. It was a large mill, obviously, and the Halifax, or Reeds Range it is now, released them all on one Monday morning, and they were queued up from the Saturday. Right. And I had a client who paid a couple of guys who come over from Poland at the time. They were doing joinery work for him, and the guys from Poland camped outside.
Just camped.
And my brother-in-law done it for us, and he bought a house. The other brother-in-law bought a house. His bestie bought a house, and his parents and they sat on the Sunday night with a few beers with everybody in the row, queuing up, and when in the next morning you paid your £500 deposit.
And where you got.
And that was it.
And crazy money, like.
One of my mates sold one of them within months for about 100 grand profit, because it just 2006 or so or 7. It just you bought something in the January, you would sell it in a year later, double your money. Yeah.
No, it was when I talk to some of the people in England, about property and trying to explain what it was like in that window.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have met, obviously, the guys I was involved with back then. One guy had the money, obviously I'll not say his name being a podcast, but he put some money up, old school, businessman, just, it was an interesting learning experience. He took 50% of the company, even though it was kind of my idea, and I went looking for him, and then another guy had 25%, but say we bought those, I think it was 23 or 26, can't remember, I think it was 23 or 26, probably 18 months. But exactly that, he was the hunting fund. Yeah. He literally had about 270 grand, 38 grand, 40 grand, 42 grand, going to easily get a mortgage on. And you were buying the property, sometimes not even doing work, doing some couple of grand of work max, which was got a lot of stuff done back in those days, and then immediately remortgaging. That might take 10 weeks. Yep. And basically pull your money out.
There were some lenders were releasing remortgages nearly for the same day that you were buying it.
Your completion on it.
Yeah, and before they brought in the 6-month rule, so 2006-7 come in, you could basically buy a house on the Tuesday and refinance it on the Wednesday. Yeah. You hadn't even registered the bloody title.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly what we did. But then,
and it was just
what a market.
Yeah.
what a market, which is why. So just on that about the way the market was, and there's no doubt that there was obviously great times in terms of. It was just an unbelievable time to be involved in property. If you had the money, had the contacts, knew what you were doing, there was obviously a price to pay in terms of what happened then, and we're definitely going to come to it because we had a lot of conversations around the crash. The banks got so much of the flack over what happened in 08 and how could you lend 110% on the value of a property, blah, 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 blah. I don't know what your view is on that. I'll throw my view out, just, and you can say what you're going to say. I know you well enough to know no matter what I say, you're not going to change your opinion based on what I said. But I used to say to people, hang on, the banks made it possible for guys to make an absolute fortune. If some people took that risk and it didn't go well and they lost everything, that was the game they were in. I don't see how you can put all the blame on the banks, because you only ever talk about the guys that lost all the money. What about the guys that were smart enough to work with the banks and didn't lose very much? So I don't know, what was your view on how we ended up where we ended up and who's to blame?
Yeah, I think the problem was the banks didn't regulate enough on the survey or on the valuation. You know, how can you buy something in February for 100 and it'll be worth 200 in June or May? You know, to me that's madness. You know, and that's why they brought in the 6-month rule, but that was too late. You know, so 6-month rule being you buy it on the 1st of January, you're not supposed to be able to sell it until the 1st of July or whatever. But what the problem with the banks was they were making too much money, or whoever was underwriting the mortgages were making too much money. So they give money to everybody. I mean, why the hell would they give money to a solicitor? Like, I wasn't making a fortune then. In fact, whenever I applied for a mortgage for my own personal home at one stage, the bank said to me, "You're not a solicitor, you're a property developer." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm a solicitor. I'm a full-time solicitor." He says, "No, for the money you're making or in your finances, you're not making anywhere near what you're making as a solicitor. So you're obviously buying and selling, making more money." So they seen me as whatever they wanted to be. I mean, I remortgaged a house on the Shore Road in Jordanstown for $5,500 grand.
Right.
And I was not earning a lot of money at that. I wasn't earning what you would need to earn. What would you need to earn now to get a mortgage at $5,500? Dear. 15 grand a month or something in your hand, or you know. I wouldn't have been even on 5 at the time, you know. So there were just
was it a self-cert mortgage, or they just took the figures you give and were happy to
First
take it?
Trust Bank, basically. I bought it again. I bought a big 7-bed thing down by the sea, renovated it, bought it for $215, and it would have been worth nearly $1 million at the height of the market, maybe more.
Right.
And they were happy. So it was only 50% loan to value, which is good.
But,
but madness. But I took that 500 grand and went and bought 20 houses with it.
Yeah.
Which Lindsay likes to throw into my face every now and again.
Why wouldn't do that, would they?
No, not at all. But in saying that, I still have a lot of the property that I bought then. But I mean, in 2006, 5, Devarn Crescent, off the Woodvale Road, 2 up, 2 downs. People were buying them for 175 grand. You wouldn't get 75. Well, you maybe get 75 grand if it was sitting pretty with a double extension on it. Now, houses in the Shankill Estate, 150 grand.
Yeah.
You know, for a 3-bed council house that's built from poured concrete. It's not even a proper construction. When are they going to be? Like, they're still not.
And can you ever see them coming back to that sort of level?
Probably when our kids are our age.
I was gonna say,
you know, and that's
not
just
our
natural
lifetime.
inflation, you know. But
Yeah.
I mean, but how did the people? I know the people were buying them, but the thing about it was, my mate says to me, he had a depot in Dublin, and he said he knew the shit was going to hit the fan when the taxi driver was talking to you about his property portfolio. You know, you know, how many houses do you own? And it was like, none. I have a business that's bloody enough to keep me out of trouble.
Yeah.
You know, and
no, it's an interesting point, because that's exactly what it was like.
It was just
the big
easy
thing, and a couple of TV programs then on mainstream TV, and this is how easy it is to do. Money was easily available, therefore you almost couldn't go wrong.
We made a clean fortune, but probably lost a clean fortune and still have houses in negative equity.
Yeah.
You know, I had an 8-metre motorhome and a Porsche and a nice big house in the hill, and it failed me 11 plus 10 years before that. Or whatever, 15. You know, you think about it.
And that was just the right place, right time, but also
hard work as well. I mean,
hard work. I was going to say, but you also had to have the guts to go for it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people looked at it and went, "Oh, I wish I could buy a property. Should buy a property." Never did it. You took action.
If Lindsay had her way, we'd still be in the first house we ever bought. You know, because very, you know, don't, you know. But we're yin and yang, and it's worked well. You know, I probably could have been bankrupt if she hadn't been. You know, a few things I would have done. I would have just kept going because it was too easy.
Yeah. Well, there's an element of that. I mean,
you
obviously we had a disaster over in Cape Verde, as you know, and that was certainly one that Brenda, right out of the gate, was like, no. I'm like, no, but nice, you know, lovely beach, been there, selling property, and she really, and then it was basically it was going to be 50% mortgage, 50% cash. So we put the 50% in and sold a couple of properties in one in Lurk and Pickerley, and took the profits and just said, okay, we'll buy this apartment out in Cape Verde. And Brenda's like, no. And I'm like, no. So done. But then it was right at 07 when the crash came. And this brings us on nicely to the needs of solicitors, because I didn't have any more than 50%, right? The idea was the other would be a mortgage. Crash comes, no lenders lending on property in Cape Verde. The developer saying to me, what's your next payment? I'm like, we don't have it. You know, I was going to do a mortgage. Like, read the small print. What's another 100,000 euros? So it was a €199 property. You paid 100,000 euros didn't have any more.
Yep.
And I actually at one point then threw another 20 grand at them to buy more time. And Brenda was like nearly on the kitchen floor on her knees going, no, please, no. And all right, I'll get some money gathered up. We lost a lot, 120,000 euros gone.
Yeah.
All really primarily because I didn't even probably read the contract. So brings us nicely on to your role as a solicitor.
And if you had have read the contract and you knew that you had to get the money, you'd have probably thought you were going to get the finance anyway. So would you
possibly,
have signed it?
but at least you would have known that you're on the hook for it earlier. It was a total shock to me when I realised that actually I could lose this property, even though I've paid 100,000 euros. I can still lose it because I don't have the money right now for the next payment.
Yeah, you see,
that was a shock for me.
Normally, we would never have a signed contract with a builder unless you have your house agreed for sale, and that's where your deposit's coming from, and finance in place as well. Now, back in the day, whenever the house could have been signed, like them Barn Mills apartments, and maybe it was 18 months, you know, before they were actually physically built, and especially because they were in a mill, so they were all released together, because you can't have one apartment and, you know, boys putting pipes and drains and sewers in above your head. So you would always had a position where it was subject to finance and subject to mortgage. And in the Law Society, in fairness to them, they have their standard building agreement and their standard contract, and there is a proviso for finance being available, so the builder will know that you're. And a lot of builders, they will ask for a deposit, but a lot of people who are buying and selling to move house, you don't have 40 grand or 50 grand or something, because it's all in your house.
In your house.
So your money's coming from your deposit. So a lot of the builders will be happy. I'm not sure that's the same in the UK. I think a lot of the builders will ask for sort of 20 or 30 grand up front, or we're in the UK, the rest of the UK.
That's the UK.
So in that scenario, that can be an issue. But the contracts, when we're acting for anybody, it's the most important part is where's your dough. You know, and that's what's the most important part, you know. Yeah.
No, listen, and you've probably seen it, and I know we're probably going to go on to some good case studies and anecdotes. But so, like high level, someone's involved in any type of property. I know you were describing maybe people buying maybe their own house, but even when it comes to, you know, buy-to-let properties, commercial properties, opportunities that come along, distress sales, auction sales, like. How important are the legals in that? You know,
Finance is key. That's the most important part. My analogy for everybody, whenever I'm buying or selling the property, whether it's for 10 million or 10p, is a jigsaw. And in Northern Ireland, it's the solicitors who are selling the property. It's their responsibility to supply the pieces of the puzzle. We then put the pieces of the puzzle together, so we make the jigsaw. And only when the last piece of the puzzle falls into place should you be then signing a contract. Or alternatively, if you're trying to maybe, like I signed a contract today, still a few searches outstanding, still a few things outstanding. It's a house in East Belfast that has been there forever, since 1902. I know it has sewers, I know it has planning, I know, you know, all the things that aren't going to be applicable, but that contract has been signed to concentrate the mind of the sellers and to concentrate their solicitors, who can be problematic in Northern Ireland, as we all know, or anywhere, with the theory being you can release a contract subject to updated searches, maps, property certificates. That is not the normal scenario, but you can do that. And sometimes if somebody's got a builder or somebody's trying to do a bit of creative financing at another stage, if they're holding a contract subject to, but it's only when the last piece of the puzzle falls into place and you have your full jigsaw do you then complete. But finance is everything, especially in commercial Northern Ireland, and especially if you're buying with a corporate entity, a company, because there are only two lenders, as we were talking earlier, in relation to, there's Kensington and Quantum, and I hate dealing with them because it's an old school yellow pages of instructions. Now they're good in the sense that you know what you have to do, but the paperwork involved and the detail and the you know, there has no environmental conscience whatsoever. You know, you just chop trees. It's you know, and it works, and you have no choice.
And is that because they're just trying to be belt and braces? And they
treat everything as if you're spending 500 million, which I suppose is fair enough, because it's 50 grand or 500 million. If it's your money,
it's the same.
But at some stage there has to be a level. I've completed on a few recent deals with personal lenders. It'll just break your heart. You know, I mean, we have entities out there who are lending money at the moment to a company. So you and Brenda as your company are buying property, well, they want personal guarantees from you. They want a first charge on your property. They want a debenture on your company. They want you to sign stock transfer forms to transfer the shares in your company to them. If you default, they want you to sign a resignation letter. So you're signing a resignation letter for the company that you own as a director, so that in the event of a default, they're holding all this documentation. What's the first charge in debenture for if you have all that? You know, it's excessive. To me, I think it's excessive, but I'm not the one lending them the money. So it's all relative. But I do think Northern Ireland has a real problem. We have less than 2% of the market when it comes to UK mortgages. I was a chairman of a landlords association from 14 to 17 and a half or something thereabouts before COVID. I bailed out, thankfully. And as part of that, as chairman of the landlords association, I was involved in what was known as the repossession task force. And we used to bring in a number of property individuals. There was a guy from the Law Society. There was me as the chairman of the Landlords Association. We had different departments from housing, from road service planning, the whole 9 yards. And the Council of Mortgage Lenders guy had zero interest. He was there. He was sent over on a plane every month to listen to this because we're such a small market.
He just had no interest really.
Well, I don't think personally he had any interest in being there. He used to sit. Or stare out the window.
Right. And that's really just because such a small part of the market. There was no commercial value really.
Personally, I think they were there to tick the boxes for the government. Also, I mean, at that stage, going back, whenever everything hit the fan, Northern Ireland really struggled. I mean, Birmingham Midshires would have been a lender who would have said, "Oh yes, we're still lending in Northern Ireland," until you got the mortgage offer, and the mortgage offer again had so many special conditions that you couldn't complete.
You were dizzy by the time you jumped through the hoops.
So you were getting a mortgage offer, and I think politically they were able to say to the government, who of course were funding them all at this stage, they bought all their bad debt. Yes, we have these products, and we're still lending in Northern Ireland, and we're but
irrelevant.
Out of every 10 mortgages, you could maybe draw down on one.
Yeah, which then that just kills the market in terms of everything. So I mean, we've always been more expensive to access lending, right across, not just lending, car insurance, all sorts of stuff. They're more expensive. Are there any other factors in terms of the property market here, in terms of the lenders, other than just the size of the market, that you would say contribute to that?
They don't understand our legislation. Northern Ireland was formed in 1921. The Land and Property Act, which most of England and Wales is guided by, was formed started 1925. And that's when their land registry sort of started ratcheting up. There is nothing that is not registered in the land registry in England and Wales, whereas we still have the old registry of deeds system. So we still have a shoebox for some properties. Now, there are about 78 or 80% of properties in Northern Ireland are now in the newer system.
Right.
But there's still that boogeyman in the lender's eye, and we also still have long leasehold, which is again a political thing from back in the day, when the king gave the land to the lord of the manor, and then the lord of the manor gave the land to the plebs. You weren't allowed to hunt my forests, you weren't allowed to fish in my river, you weren't allowed to do this. And we still have long leasehold, but our long leases are 9,000 years, 10,000 years, 999 years, with a minimal ground rent, £4, 6p, 1 peppercorn, it's a housing executive deed. All these things that if you are a lender in the UK and have no experience of Northern Ireland, very few of them train their staff to understand
and be able to deal with that.
Whenever you say it's leasehold, they all panic. Why is this detached house in the middle of wherever leasehold? Because it's for 10,000 years. So it's freehold and everything, but it's name.
And it's name, but it's enough you're saying that the lenders go, don't understand it, don't want to spend the time and the resources to understand it. It's a problem, we'll just say no.
Even paying off your mortgage, whenever you pay your mortgage off in England and Wales, I think they do the same in Scotland. Scotland's
that's a whole different. That's a podcast for a different day.
You need about 3 days for that. In England and Wales, you pay your mortgage off, the lender can go online automatically and remove your charge from land registry because they have a portal for that.
We just do it.
In Northern Ireland, we don't, because some of them are land registry and some of them aren't. You have to physically send the old deed with a release
then
and you have to pay a fee for that.
And
So
you're
people
in
would
the-
say
the-
to me, I have a guy at the moment I'm doing a bit of work for, paid his mortgage off 30 years ago, living in the same house, you know, and I'm saying to him, but you've still got a mortgage, and he went into one. How dare you? You know, I don't have a mortgage, and I say, you may not, you've paid it off, but it hasn't been physically removed from your title, you know.
And for how long? 30 years?
Yeah, it was in the 90s,
Wow.
you know. But he's a young man, you know, he's in his 70s now, but paid his house off when he was in his late 40s, early 50s, and now he's looking to do a bit of inheritance tax planning.
Yeah.
And I've told him,
Lo and behold, he's sitting with that still in his.
yeah, it's a straightforward application, but that's the sort of thing.
Yeah, if it's not done, it's still there.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay,
You know?
no, so you mentioned earlier actually about creative finance, and I know that the TC Legal are well known for, if you like, being imaginative, is maybe a good way of putting it, in terms of your leasehold, your options, and that whole thing around creative finance. Did you go down that route because there was a need for it, or was it like solution driven?
When it hit the fan, and there was no clients in 2008, I had a lot of English investors, and vice versa, because of course everybody in Northern Ireland, because of the market, was in England buying up.
Yes, that's right.
Up the northeast.
Yes, that's right.
And William Ray out of Ray Estates actually had a few good clients who came over, and and William actually still has a big estate agency in the northeast of England.
Right. Okay.
And he had a few guys who came over, and anybody south of Cambridge at that stage, you know, everything was worth squillions.
Yes.
So they came over with the idea of taking options. So you had a whole raft of landlords who had accidental landlords as well, who had properties that were now in negative equity and was breaking their heart, and they just wanted shot. And then of course the interest rate started to fall, so you had a mechanism where the mortgage was only £100 a month, but you could get £450, £500 in rent. So we started doing, a guy who will remain nameless started doing quite a lot of options and came to see me, and I started doing that, started installment contracts, options, long leaseholds. You know, there's the whole raft of rent to rent.
Like offshoots, if you like, from that. Yeah.
And I ended up doing hundreds of them, you know.
And that was before Raymond really became
Yeah,
popular.
but yeah.
You know, after that it became
the Law Society. The girl who was the sort of compliance officer of the Law Society came to see me and tore me all sorts of new ones for about 2 hours one day. But I was comfortable with everything we were doing, was above board. I mean, we weren't in breach of any rules and regulations. We notified the lenders, we got the insurance changed, you know, the buy-to-let, everything that you needed to do to comply with the rules and regulations was all done, you know.
And that opened up a new income stream for you then, effectively?
Yeah, very much so. And I got a lot of investors and a lot of clients, and still very good clients to this day. A couple of guys in particular who solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had a guy who had a house, defective title, defective, you know, everything was wrong with this house. It was falling down. There was a crack in the wall. Take it off you, put an option on it for a year, buy it, do it up, fix the problems, do this, do that, make an application to land registry to reclassify the title. And you've done a deal, say at 100 grand, he'll maybe take it and spend 30 or 40 on it and sell it for 200. And you only get your 100 out the back end. But they were going to get nothing, or maybe going to give it back to the lender, or a lot of times it's maybe, you know, great uncle Bulgaria's house that has been sitting bloody rotten for 50 years, and the family are given this property that nobody needs to do. So we have a lot of mechanisms and systems and contracts that allows people to have that ability to actually redo and rejig and you know, what we would do is the likes of them option contracts, we would register them on the title, so that there's a protection.
So there's
and the person who owns the house would still own it. So you take the option on the property, it's registered against a restriction on your title, and that contract then sits there. So the owner's comfortable, they have a safety blanket, they still own the house. The guy who's putting the 20 or 30 grand in it is comfortable that he's covered. And everybody is all signed and it's all done properly and it works. You know.
And that definitely opened up a whole new sector within property. Because back then it was just, well, you buy and sell, that's it.
Chris and Mary Selwood, you know, they started doing, you know, good friends of ours, head of the property meet, or that was their baby, and they would have started off with a lot of options.
Right. Okay.
You know, they were like ourselves, got our fingers burnt slightly, and you know, whenever it all went mad, and to get to where they are, they would have, you know, signed a,
Had
you
to
know,
do. Yeah.
yeah. And I started working with them.
So you're mentioning there about having to readjust because of what happened in 08. So let's grasp the nettle of the journey we all walked in 2008. I got involved in 2000. You know, had those 26 odd properties. We then exited that, actually split it up, got stuck into buy-to-lets, myself and Brenda. You obviously were the solicitor on all of those. And then I obviously went to Iraq with the forces in 04, come back 05. We then remortgaged everything we had bar one in about 2006, 2007. So now we're sitting with properties that we bought for maybe 40, 45, worth 110, 120, got a 70 grand, 70% mortgage, LTV on them. Now we're mortgaged at 70, 76, 78,000. So just explain what actually happened. Where did our market go in terms of percentage drop?
Lehman Brothers, I think we were actually one of the first to recognise it, because the bank stopped lending nearly overnight when Lehman Brothers collapsed. All the obviously CEOs of the banks thought, whoa, hold on, what's going on? But guys like you were still buying or still had projects and renovating, and joiners, plumbers, sparks, all the guys who were doing the work. I think it took about 6 months for that to kick in. But I remember myself and Victor didn't take a wage out of the business for about 4 months, and I think it was the start of 08, because it was just nothing, you know. So the bank stopped lending, so all the deals that we had, I had one particular client who had 26 houses, I think, agreed to a guy for 2 point whatever, millions of pounds, and it was actually, apparently the solicitor had signed the contracts but hadn't released them, because they were just trying to formalise it, and they never arrived with us, and he ended up being made bankrupt because of it. Guy who'd been in Dubai the year before for his wedding and had stayed a week extra because he was able to, and just lost everything. And I mean, that was across the board. I have a whole pile of clients who had bought and sold, done exactly what you done. It was just too easy, you know, refinance, and lost their drawers, you know, or, you know, ended up firefighting and doing deals with the bank and paying off all sorts of stuff. And guys still to this day, including myself, I bought 6 properties in 2007 for 122 grand each in a deal that probably was about 20% under market value at the time, and thought it was John Wayne. And I still have them properties because they're not worth.
And they're worth what, 70, 80 grand, 80 grand most?
Yeah, maybe hopefully sneaking up towards 100.
Yeah.
But I also bought them with a Birmingham Mid-Shires mortgage, which was 0.5% below base at a time.
Right.
Which then, as the interest rate fell, I didn't pay any mortgage on them houses for about 18 months because it was 0.5 below base, and whenever the interest rate was 0.5 or 0.2, whatever it was,
it was zero.
which is madness. But if I hadn't have had things like that fall in my favour and the interest rate, I'd have been gone. And as a solicitor, I can't be gone because I can't be bankrupt. So I still have a pile of property that is in negative equity. And think about it, it's 2024.
Yeah, I know.
You know?
It's frightening to think the time goes by.
And then George Osborne put us all to the sword because of his changes to the Section 21 the tax rules.
Yeah.
So from making money, all of a sudden I'm not making money. And I've started selling the last couple of years. I've been buying and selling bits and pieces and doing flips, which have been successful. But the tax man just 2020, whenever everybody was during COVID, I paid that much tax that would cry your eyes out because of just the way it all changed and the way the rules and regs.
Yeah.
And then I've started selling off.
What was it like in terms of mentally? You alluded to the fact your job was on the line, and obviously a lot of your clients were losing their money, you know,
losing their mind
mind and money, and obviously, you know, I count you as a friend. We've known each other a long time, but you're also the professional person in the room when deals have been done. What was it like for you individually to see people that you counted as friends, clients, just literally lose everything, and you're on the verge of losing everything as well? How do you cope with that mentally?
The only good thing for me, if you were in seeing me, I was making money as the business, you know. The solicitors firm, we do everything. There's nothing really we don't do. So, you know, wills, probate, people still die, people still get divorced, so that part of it, and when Victor Thompson retired, I mean, we had 6 or 7 staff, of now 22. So I've grown the whole thing. It's my business now, it's my company. So I've grown the whole thing quite well, ably assisted by the staff, of course, and a couple of other directors with me as well. But I was able to drive that, and that probably kept me sane, plus having 3 daughters. Yeah, and so I'm very, you know, as I say, I was never a rich student. So, I mean, I went from, as I say, having a big house and a Porsche and all them sort of things to thinking, right, what I was selling next. But I hadn't refinanced everything, and our personal homes always had a few quid in it, so I had a bit of a get out of jail free clause. But the interest rate kept us alive. I mean, if the interest rate hadn't went down, the whole country would have been bankrupt. It would have been like Iceland. You know, back in the day, where it would have, like, you know, if the interest rate had stayed at 4 or 5%, there's nobody.
There's no surviving.
So, you know, and there's no social houses being built by anybody. So who would have housed everybody?
Yeah.
You know,
it is, and you wonder how much of that's actually behind the scenes been manipulated by the men in grey suits, because that was the fact that interest rates went down to where they went down to. What certainly saved us. We were
10 years, you know.
we went like from, I think, about 1.6 million equity to negative equity in whatever it was, 5-6 weeks. But the fact that the rent was obviously way above the interest only mortgages we had.
Yep.
We actually managed to get through literally by saying, well, at least there's this money coming in from, you know, a dozen properties. And but tough, and the way I describe now what's happened with interest rates back up again, and again you've all the debates about whether or not, you know, capital repayment, interest only, and the good old days, people in here would have came to fist fight over it about what the right strategy was. Those that did capital repayment and took the pain over the last 10-15 years are laughing. If people have taken interest only and invested their money wisely, maybe. But those that didn't,
you know, that I don't know anybody who's done that.
Well,
interest only, and you go and buy other nonsense that you don't need, and nice holidays, and everything else.
So when people are saying to me about, oh, you know, you're always on about property for the last, you know, since 2000 and the rest of it, I said, look, the way I look at the situation now, with the high interest rates and the fact our portfolio, in terms of the interest rate, the rent barely covers it. You're looking for money some months to cover it. It's like, listen, we've listened to the tune since 2008. It's now time to pay the piper. That's, you know, there's no point crying about it, no point whinging about it. We're all in the game we're in. We make our decisions on the information that's there. And right now it's painful if you've got a portfolio and the interest rates are going through the roof. But as you also say at the very start of the conversation, what do you say your parents' mortgage was originally?
It was 18%.
So their
first ever mortgage in 1984 or 3 or something was 18.
And people are crying now at 5 and 6%, as if the world's about to come to an end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, have you found that as you get older in terms of in the business that it is cycles?
Yeah, very much so.
Property?
Yeah, you know, and it'll continue to be the same. You know, it's starting to heat up again over here, thankfully. I just wanted to heat a bit fast.
a bit further.
So I can get rid of it, you know, but and that's what it seems to do. And if you look at history, you know, it's I don't know why we can't have other than boom and bust. Yeah. You know, why does it go from, as you say, the men in grey suits, somebody's pulling strings somewhere?
I think that's exactly what it is. You know, it suits certain entities at certain times.
Yeah, it's like
the whole COVID thing, and we're not getting into conspiracy theory podcast, we'll be blackballed, but I mean, you can't look at what happened over the whole COVID thing and think there wasn't men and women sitting around tables setting strategy based on who could make money.
I wish they would bring the bloody sunshine back. What happened?
I know it was even worse, wasn't it? So I want to delve quickly before we begin to wrap up on regulation around things like HMOs and you know, we've got just, you know, obviously SA now. This is the whole big craze now. HMOs. From a lawyer point of view,
you've touched on a nerve there when it comes to HMOs. That was part of the reason why I actually stopped being the chairman of Landlords Association, because I knew there was a whole pile of legislation coming in for HMOs that was just going to be hard work.
Right. And
the chairman role is a voluntary role. The Landlords Association in Northern Ireland is basically guys who rent properties and girls who have an organisation, and they always try and help each other. In England, the Landlords Association is actually, I think, the chairman's on 200 grand a year or something, and it's a proper funded organisation, so it shows you the difference. But HMOs, political football, the Holy Lands created a storm for everybody.
Yes.
And everybody else. So then the whole idea of HMOs is, oh, they're the bogeyman, they're the devil, they're the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Plus the fact then you have socialists, Sinn Féin, who are in charge of the housing. And their attitude is, forget about the green and the blue, it's nothing to do with that. They're socialists, that's what they are.
Yeah.
And their whole attitude is, people should have houses and people, which of course they should. It shouldn't be landlords, everybody should have their own home. But there's been no social houses built for 30 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we were all kids. I grew up in a council house.
Yeah.
You were probably richer than me, but that's another story.
Is that opposite? My mum and dad are missionaries, sure. They come back.
I know.
They got back here in 1980, and everything they owned was in 2 40-gallon drums.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was poorer than you.
But my generation, I'm 51 in June. But my whole generation, there was always council houses. There was there was houses. There was people. But that was government built properties.
Yes, there were options.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
I never forget whenever I found out, whatever it was, 2005 or 6, that I think 25%, I can't remember the figures, something like that, of the housing stock, or 26%, was actually private buy-to-lets. So the government were allowing that whole buy-to-let market to heat up and heat up and heat up.
Yeah.
And because they weren't obviously putting new houses on the market, now there's a bit of social housing built now.
Yeah,
but it's not covering.
Late.
Yeah, exactly.
It's too little. Too late.
It's
in many
finger
ways.
in a dam. It's bursting all around you.
Yes, exactly.
So you have that. Sorry, I digress. The whole political thing for me with a socialist idea in Northern Ireland of everybody should have their own home and everybody shouldn't have HMOs and everything else. It's a disaster. Like at the moment, we have clients with a guy who applied for an HMO in North Belfast. All the locals are up in arms because they don't want the HMOs. I don't know why. This guy wants to put young professionals in it. He doesn't want to put immigrants or asylum seekers. It's nothing to do with that. It's to do with getting 5 or 6 guys in, or girls who are going to be working for Citibank, be working for me, be working for But the council have objected to the application, and now they're saying, oh, you haven't got the parking, and then they've seen something next to say, oh, you haven't got the right bin space.
Yeah, they're just looking for excuses.
The councillors have no training on planning, or very little of them. Now I'm saying that because they do have planning training, but anybody who I've spoken to, it's blatantly obvious that they haven't.
Right.
They haven't done it. Yes, exactly.
So
the councils now have people in planning who are councillors who, like, I know I'm from Carrick, and some of the councillors in Carrick have never worked a day in their life. You get into politics when you're young, and you're a politician, and you're a councillor, and then you're an MLA and everything else. So they've never had a job, in my opinion. They've never worked in the real world.
And yet they're making big decisions.
And they're now deciding on planning applications. The big thing then, the housing executive closed down their HMO unit and put it into the local council. So that's all now in charge of the local council. If you have had an HMO for 40 years and you try to sell it now and you don't have planning permission, though you won't let you. Why? It's been an HMO for 40 years. So under all the old legislation, it should be valid. What they're saying is now, no, you do have your planning in the sense that you're not in breach of any legislation, but they will not give you a license. By the HMO, the city council will not give you a license because you do not have your CLUD, your permitted development. And what they're doing is screwing the people who have the HMOs into the ground, because you need to have all this legislation. Now, I'm all for legislation, but not when it's being abused and used. And it's a political football. Nobody will tell me any different. The politicians are saying, oh, look, we're great. We stopped these HMOs in your house, on your street, come and vote for me. It's this nonsense. What is the expression they use? I can't remember. Where it's not on our street, or not in our house, or not in our town.
Yes, the analogy of the dumps. Everyone wants a dump, but not.
Exactly. And it's the exact same thing. So if you're coming to work as a 25-year-old for Citibank and all these new, Baker McKenzie, all these large corporate law firms that are all open in Belfast, paying good money, and you want just somewhere to crash for 2 years because you're from Cork or you're from Timbuktu and you want to come and live in Belfast for a couple of years. So what do? You have to go and rent a 3-bed house in Finnegy at £1,000 a month.
You've got this massive need for properties,
and
then at the same time they're limiting the creation of property options for people. And it's like, well, can you not? And
they're taxing the life out of the normal landlords. Everybody like me is trying to get out because it's not worth. They're actually being taxed on non-profit.
Yes, exactly.
And yet you're not making a profit, but you have to pay on it.
The overarching problem still exists. We need more houses, we need more accommodation, we need more rooms. But it's short-sightedness as politicians, particularly in England, election coming up, what can we do to try and get some votes? Oh, well,
I think it's the same here, you know, and South Belfast. They use South Belfast and the Holy Lands as an example. Which, if I lived in the Holy Lands, I wouldn't be too happy either.
Yeah.
But a lot of them houses, they're not fit for purpose. They're talking about, oh, they need to be repopulated. They're 8-bed, 3-story, no front garden, no back garden.
Yeah.
What family wants to grow in that? Exactly. You know, nowhere to park your car. There's no garage. There's no, you know.
They're actually suited to HMO type accommodation.
Exactly. And they have, and that's
because students or professionals are looking for accommodation.
That's madness.
This is all the challenge of the market. So coming to an end now, crystal ball. What would your crystal ball? 1 year out, 5 years out. What are we right?
I think the banks are cute enough now that hopefully they'll not lend, or they won't. The government won't allow them because they need to have so much liquidity. They'll not let it run away with itself. If you get your 5 or 6 or 10% inflationary sort of increases every year, then that works for everybody. Yeah. You know, but of course something stupid will happen. You know, there'll be another war, or somebody will ban oil, or you know, and the world loses the plot. You know,
and then you're back to another cycle.
Yeah. You know.
So in terms of legally, then thinking of someone involved in property, either in property or professionally, a couple of don't do this scenarios that you would say to somebody based on either people who made mistakes in the past or whatever, but you would say
don't do anything without taking legal advice. I know that's a stupid thing to say, but the amount of people, we're always last in the queue, and it baffles me.
That's a good point.
I've went to see the estate agent, I've went to see the house, I've went to see the financial advisor, and the amount of people who phone you and say, how you doing? I've bought a house, can you help me? And I say, sure, if you bought it, you don't need me. Oh no, but it's agreed. Right, you know, and can I complete before Jimmy's birthday in 2 weeks? No, you know, go and see your solicitor first. Be very wary of deals that are, you know, too good to be true. They are. There's a problem. There's a defect. There's a flaw. There's a boundary issue. There's a septic tank issue. There's a right of way. There's a display. You know, there's management company issues. There are so many bogeymen out there that can bite your bum. Get your solicitor engaged early, and make sure that you have a good relationship and trust your solicitor. And that's a big thing. Northern Ireland's terrible for, well, all of the world is, but I mean, we're specifically, you know, well, but Davy, who works in the pub, told me that that's not right, and you think, you know, and the thing about it is, they actually do believe, you know, so, and they'll not, you know, what are you telling me? Say, I've spent 30 years doing this, maybe I have a good idea what's happening, you know. But that's the big thing. Speak to somebody early doors. Auction properties in Northern Ireland, be very wary of auction properties. The day that hammer falls, that house is yours. The amount of people who sign it at an auction and say to me, would you look at that legal pack? And I was like, you've already bought it. What do you want me to check it for? I'll register the title.
Why spend the money?
Do you want me to tell you what you don't want to know because it's a disaster? You know, when your neighbour owns half your back garden and all sorts of things. You know, like there's a property for sale in Carrick at the moment, and it's for nothing. But if you do your homework, the house beside has been burnt out 4 times because the paramilitaries didn't like who was in it. And you wonder why the house is for, you know, don't just see something online and do, you know, we used to do back in the day, bad without looking at it. You know, as a site.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, it's very much so, all them sort of things, you just, you know, use your head, but get legal advice, you know, get a good lawyer, get a good financial advisor, and don't just jump in right away because there's a reason why there's something up or something, you know, there's a deal to be had.
No, that sounds brilliant. Well, I have really enjoyed that, and I'm half kicking myself because I didn't ask the question I would normally ask before the event. How you gotta come dressed? Because I would usually always try and dress the same as the guest. So I had a thought, Raymond will come in his 3-piece suit.
I'm only doing this because I was in work and I'm going to work. I'm going back to work, you know. As I said earlier, and I usually only have my 3-piece on during the winter, but sure, winter hasn't arrived.
It hasn't arrived.
It hasn't left yet.
We're
so
in May, we're still in the May. You know, we don't do spring. It just goes. You get a wee bit of summer, bit of winter all at the same time.
Exactly.
You know, so no, absolute pleasure, Raymond.
Thank you, David.
Superb, and you know, obviously you're so knowledgeable in terms of your experience.
Well, been there, done it.
Experience comes from sometimes things you've seen and mistakes made, and you're always very upfront about some of the mistakes you've made in the past. But I certainly value your professional opinion on our journey over the last number of years, and long may it continue.
Happy days, very much so.
Success in the future.
Thank you.